And welcome to our panel discussion on the very important topic of managing for the future. I'm Dr. Leila Afshari. I'm the Industry Engagement Coordinator and a Senior Lecturer in Human Resource Management here at the School of Management, RMIT University. We all know that the way we work and do business is changing rapidly because of the digital transformation driven by artificial intelligence and technology. And the one question that everyone now is trying to find an answer, and more importantly, people in this room, and by people in this room, I'm talking about management and business scholars of today and tomorrow. We are trying to find an answer to this question. Are we ready for the future? Stay tuned. We might have an answer to this question by the end of this event. I'm so delighted to have some of the best in the business world joining me on this very important discussion panel. We have Jack Avro, a principal consultant at Q1 Group, a cybersecurity consultant in the financial services industry. We have Brooke O'Keefe joining us online, HR manager at Randstad Australia. We have Jay Petal, founder and managing director of Smart Learn X. Zemil Saba, chief people and culture officer at Dental Health Services Victoria. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists to this discussion. Thank you very much. This would be yours. Hi again, and very warm welcome from myself and my students, our students, and from all my colleagues from School of Management. We are very delighted to have you here, and welcome Brooke as well online. We are very delighted to have you here. To begin, I would like to give you an opportunity to every panelist in the room to introduce themselves and talk about the challenges your industry is facing in preparation for the future. Can we start from you, Jack?
Yeah, I'll start. That's a very flattering photo back when I was a bit more tanned, but anyway. Yeah, so as a brief introduction, I was sitting when you guys were sitting about 2 years ago, so I graduated just recently. And since then, I did a few different things. I started a small business and tried a few different industries, and I ended up landing in a bit of a hybrid of IT and cybersecurity because I felt like that's really where there is a lot of opportunity, particularly in the next few years. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And yeah, ultimately, I'm just going to share a little bit about the main issues that we see coming up in terms of how we see management going in the IT and cybersecurity industry. And I think that could be helpful for some of you guys if you're looking at that area, but also can apply broader to just general management in any sort of technology industry.
Explain about some other challenges that the industry, especially in the space of cybersecurity, are facing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm sure most people here are seeing a lot more in the news day to day about cybersecurity threats, and the threat landscape is changing quite significantly, particularly because of artificial intelligence. As you can imagine, if you were someone who wanted to steal money or hold someone for ransom, you probably wouldn't rob a bank. You would actually hack the bank and rob the information itself. So that's generally reflected in the frequency of attacks that we're seeing. In terms of how that relates to what we're talking about today in terms of management is what I'm seeing in the management level of the cybersecurity organizations and consultancies is the fact that by nature, IT is constantly evolving. You need to evolve with that in terms of management. So obviously we need to upskill people significantly. One of the main, I guess, vulnerabilities that you see in the cyberspace is actually insider threats. So obviously you can have a $1.5 billion cybersecurity capability, but if one of your employees clicks a link in an email, you're basically done. So I guess one of the main areas that we're seeing a lot of development in is actually training and awareness. So not only is it important that your employees have, I guess, up to date with the best policies in terms of what you're supposed to do to keep in mind of your cybersecurity exposure, but also reminding them there's almost a responsibility in terms of how you can actually do your part to protect the organization which you work for, and then broadly the general public, because that's where their information is stored. So in terms of management, I would say generally we're seeing more resources towards upskilling those staff members, as insider threats can be quite a significant issue. And to be on to the next sort of section, because that's more of, I guess, IT and security, but we also do a bit of work in recruitment as well, and technical sales. So from that point of view, there is a significant skill shortage in Australia. We are quite behind in terms of other nations like the UK or the US. So obviously we're seeing more of that now. I know RMIT, you guys have recently done I think of just a bachelor in cybersecurity, which isn't really that common. So that's excellent. But obviously we need to, I guess, incentivize more people towards moving towards cybersecurity, because IT is massive. But I just think that is generally where we are seeing things going in terms of actually protecting the general population of Australia. So yeah, there is definitely a skill shortage, but we are moving the right direction.
Really good to know that we are ahead in this space as well as many other spaces. When I say we, RMIT as a university, we are ahead in many other spaces, but it's good to know that we are also ahead in this space as well. Thank you very much. Can we now move to Brooke? Brooke, welcome to our discussion panel, and thank you very much for making it to the session. We know that you had flight cancellation and all that, but we are very grateful to have you. Could you please introduce yourself and talk about the challenges that your industry is facing and experiencing in the face of transformation for the future? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Disappointing that I can't be there today, but I also appreciate the effort that's gone into facilitating me to join virtually, but I guess it's all about being agile. So really happy to be contributing this way. So my name is Brooke O'Keefe. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. I was just saying that this is the future of work, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Flexible.
Yes. So my name is Brooke O'Keefe. I am one of the HR leaders at Randstad. I've been practicing in the field for around 13 years, and have been working with the university for a number of years as well. So our goal at Randstad is to be the world's most equitable and specialised talent company. And I'm looking forward to hearing more around the colleagues on the stage with regards to their challenges, and particularly viewing some of those through that equity lens. So I'm interested in the discussion today. And in terms of the key challenges which face our industry, the first one is talent scarcity. So talent, I think Jack touched on this broadly. Talent is scarce. So this is a huge challenge for us. And depending on your frame of reference, it's also our biggest opportunity. So, and particularly as the labour market becomes more and more specialised, acquiring skills and being able to acquire the right talent for the opportunities that exist is increasingly difficult. In addition, like many industries, we're also faced with a challenge or an opportunity with regards to the role that AI plays in the world of work as well. It's got many applications, many of which I'm sure we will discuss today. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Brooke. I'm going to ask you, Jay, now to join the discussion and introduce yourself and the challenges in your industry.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Before I start, I just want to set something specific here. I'm in Melbourne because of RMIT. I did my master's here, and I was sitting where you guys are at the moment. And one of the things that my professor always told us was, you'll miss it when it's finished. And we thought he was crazy. All right. And I went, no, I do miss my being at RMIT, but actually being on the master's program. It shaped my career. It changed my life. And you have no idea what you're letting yourself in for. So you've got an amazing journey ahead of you. All right, a bit about myself. Came here from London. I've worked on big projects around what I call global transformation. My forte is to actually help companies change. That's it. And the focus that I always start on is strategy, culture, people, and technology. Those are my 4 foundational areas. And it doesn't matter which companies you look at, it's always the same. So my blueprint's always been based around those 4 areas. I have this real innate ability to work out patterns and dots and connections. We'll talk about that towards the end. And one of the things that I've learned is that for businesses, success leaves clues. There are certain things that good businesses do, which if you lift and drop, you can make that business successful. So that's my life. That's what my career, probably for the last 25 years, has been to actually do forensics on businesses. So I, in my career, sort of oscillate between working for corporates and having full-time roles, and then going a little bit crazy and starting up businesses, and then spinning them off, and then going back into full-time role. So SmartLearnX is a company that I started about 2.5 months ago. It's my 3rd startup, and it's probably the most busiest startup I think I've ever had. From the 2nd day of launch, we didn't even get a chance to build a website yet. We've just been inundated with calls, requests for help, or just ideas for what to do next. We're actually focused at the senior advisory level. So you're talking about boards and C-level, because I believe that's where decisions get made. That's where good strategy gets set and then gets driven down the organization. So that's really my footprint of what I do. As I say, it's because of RMIT that I'm doing this at the moment. So the purpose of SmartLearnX and everything else I've done in the last 2 startups, it's going to sound really strange, but we go and change the genetics of businesses, right? So we just don't go in and do a re-engineering project or a culture change, actually change the genetics. So if you look at a business as a life force, how do you change the DNA and make it more adaptive? And talking to Leila yesterday, a while ago, the language of anti-fragile came into the marketplace. And I remember going into a board meeting and using that word, and I got told off. Senior leaders hate the word anti-fragile. So we relabeled it to an adaptive ecosystem. That's the whole reason, right? So the challenges that I have seen and continue to see, probably up on the screen. Yep. They all start from, Yuli talked about managing the future. There's one book that came out a long time ago called In Search of Excellence. It talked about companies that were successful and what made them successful. And that's like my volume, my Bible on my bookshelf at home. I always refer to it as to why some companies succeed. And it goes back to what I call the adaptive ecosystem or the anti-fragile engine. It's about business strategy. How well is that built? How well is that aligned? You know, if you look at some of the indigenous tribes like the Navajo Indians, when they make a decision, they actually reflect on 7 generations out in terms of the impact of that decision. Business strategy at the moment, if you're lucky, if that lasts 12 months and it's, you know, relevant, then it's good. So strategy is important. People, capability, hybrid working, the remote workforce, dispersed workforce all come into play. Technology plays an important part, culture and the operating model. The most important part about an adaptive ecosystem that we've seen in the last probably 2 years is what I call the pandemic memory. When I got one of my biggest roles at NAB, at my last interview, my new manager said, "What are you really good at?" And I said, "I'm really good at helping people forget." Right? And that's what companies don't do. They move forwards with one strategy to another, but they don't unlearn the stuff that they did 2 years, 3 years, 5 years ago. So all that baggage goes into the future. So smart learn is to actually get people to forget the past and build the new future. Right. So those are the challenges that we face. I can carry on, but the rest of it, remote working, employee expectation, and so forth. To contextualize the challenges that we really face. On Monday, there was a news article about the satellite that came in from the asteroid, Bennu, right? It had 250 grams of space dust that it collected. The scientists that are now looking after that sample have made an announcement that 25% of it will be used for research today. 75% of it is going to get locked away for future generations. These are scientists yet to be born, with technology yet to be built, for labs yet to be invented. And I'm trying to work out what on earth are going to, what are they going to look for? But that's the world that we're heading into. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jay. Such a wonderful and positive experience with RMIT. Thanks a lot for sharing that with us, and the challenges that we would love to maybe delve into some of those a bit in more details later on in this discussion as well. And Zamil,
hello.
Hello again. And it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little about yourself, who you are, where you're coming from, and the challenges your industry is facing?
I'm a Scorpio. I've never been to RMIT until I came here today, unlike my colleagues. And whilst I started life actually as a nurse, I've spent the last 20 years in a range of Chief People and Culture Officer roles or General Manager roles across a variety of sectors in health, in higher education, and most recently I'm the Chief People and Culture Officer at Dental Health Services Victoria. So just located in Swanston Street up the road from yourselves. I'm sure I've seen a few of you on the tram on the way into work. And I know that you wanted me to talk about challenges, and I've probably got my head of HR hat on here. And I would like to ask something of you, including all the panelists here today. So I would actually like you to rise if at any stage any of you are thinking about studying in the next decade, which may cause you to consider thinking about working part-time or working flexibly. So stand up if you think that might apply to you. Okay. I would like you to consider and stand up, or you can raise your hand, if at some stage in the next 20 years you want to become a parent, and that may cause you to wish to work flexibly. So those who've already stood up, keep standing, or raise your hand, great. I'd like any of you to raise your hand or rise if you think at some stage in your life and your career you may need to care for a loved one. Some form of carer's leave. Yep. I'd like you to stand or put your hand up if any of you are budding sports enthusiasts who may want to train for the Olympics and may want to work flexibly or part-time to do so. Have we got any? Yes, yes, in the room, my man. What sport? He's not sure yet. That's okay. Okay. I'd like you to consider to rise or raise your hand if at any stage in your career you may turn around and think, oh my God, it is absolutely unthinkable that from the moment I go into the workforce until the moment that I retire, I have to work full time. Would that be everybody? Absolutely. I guess the point of me asking the question of you and of my panelists and everyone in the room this way is that in the context of work of the future and workforce, things have changed. We all know that due to COVID, people have had the existential moment about what is work in my life as a very deep and meaningful question, and what does work look like and feel like and mean like to me? And what is just completely black and white now as the head of HR, having to manage this in my own workforce, is gone are the days that human beings want and will work 9 to 5, want and will work full time, want and will work in ways that work for them in relation to hybrid work as well. And I know that I've put some of the challenges that are also listed here, but there's also some hard, cold facts, colleagues, that I know in the industry that I work in, If you want to be a dental assistant and work in for the public sector, you might earn 60 grand a year. Guess what? Go out and work private, $80,000 to $90,000. So how do I attract a workforce in the context of the cost of living at the moment and retain them when what they do is noble and great for the community? So it's a great values fit, but it don't pay. So it's always a challenge in that environment about what do you do about engaging the hearts and minds when you don't have the hip pocket to do it. The second point I think here is I put here is part-time is the new full-time for the very reason that I asked the questions of you all today. Every human being in the context of their entirety of their life cycle will at some stage, they might be ill or injured or for any of the reasons that I'd actually proposed to all of you, will want to work part-time, they expect to work part-time, and they demand of employers that you must and will shape a part-time and flexible environment. Otherwise, guess what? What point is it? Point 3, we have, because of sector-wide shortages and global shortages in our workforce, we have what I deem a pick and choose workforce. So I will pick the employer that will give me what the type of work that I want, in the mode that I want, in the way that I want. And if you don't continue to provide that in new and different modes and ways of working, I will choose an alternate employer who is more contemporary in their thinking and that has that on offer. And when you look at companies like Atlassian, if you want to work from home, outcomes based, go for your life. If you look at Amazon, different organizations have 4-day weeks now, have work anywhere, have all sorts of different ways and modes of working. So the future of work will need to continue to evolve in that manner. And I also put down here as one of the challenges is that a career in one field of work is now an absolute rarity. And, some of the panel, a number of you, where you start in your career is highly unlikely where you will finish. I don't know anyone who graduated and all they was a level 1 accountant for the rest of their life. There's normally some iteration, some evolution, some variation. And in the type of studies you're doing, you will have many different career pathways and options to shape multiple chapters in your career. So that's also the challenge of the world. And there's no doubts in Australia, I think in particular, we are in a landscape where the challenges are significant in relation to our workplace relations and legislative requirements. We are one of the most heavily legislated workforces in the world. And guess what? It is not going to get any simpler. And we've never been able to, but whether it is states or under national legislation, we've never been able to simplify it in a way that supports and helps employers. In fact, it makes it more difficult and more challenging. So we need to think about then, as managers of people, you need to understand your workplace relations environment and landscape in which you work in your industry, and you need to look at what are enablers that can actually help the world of work moving forward. Thanks.
Such a great way of drawing attention to the flexibility, to employment flexibility. Thank you very much for that. And yes, an example of that career change is myself. I started in engineering and I ended up in academia in business world. So it can happen, and it is happening. Thank you very much for sharing, all the panelists. Thank you very much for sharing the challenges and your insights about the challenges with us. I'd like to go back to the question of adaptability, because that's where this discussion starts. We need to be adaptable. And I really like that you made a reference to, Jay, you made a reference to anti-fragility, because that is one of the concepts that we actually cover in the very first unit in our capstone course for our human resource management students. So this term anti-fragility, which was popularized by Nassim Taleb years ago, received much more attention post-COVID. So I would like to, for us to delve into this topic a little bit more and to see what organizations need to do to be more adaptable and why it is important for organizations to be more adaptable. Is there any way we can get to the future without becoming an adaptable organization? Thank you.
Wow. Okay. we're on. I think a couple of things that I want to also stress. We always hear the word competitive advantage. And when we talk about an adaptive ecosystem, that term I think is irrelevant and probably useless. In SmartLearnX, there's 3 of us. I've got a COO, Chief Operating Officer in Germany, and my design engineer in Japan. And between the 3 of us, we came up with a term called competitive disruption, which I think is far more effective than competitive advantage. Because if you're an adaptive ecosystem, your first purpose in life should be to disrupt, because you survive by creating disruption, right? You can't survive by being the same player or copying someone else's strategy. It just doesn't get you anywhere. So there are certain principles when you go down that track, and I've had to make quite a lot of notes in order to try and articulate what we do and where things are heading to. So rule number 1 is to actually be comfortable with uncertainty and volatility, right? So if you look at, organizations where they've survived because their markets have changed, they're the ones that are the leaders at the moment. The classic one that comes to mind is Netflix, right? If you look at the way they've evolved from where they started, they love uncertainty. And, they're one of the few companies that actually share their secrets out to the public. So, you can get their HR blueprint, you can get their culture blueprint, right? The other one is about speed of change. How fast can you change? And this is coming back to learning, unlearning, learning, unlearning, but then those cycles become shorter and shorter and shorter. So speed of change, using technology to help you change. Classic one is the stuff that Uber's been playing with, right? How have they evolved from going from, literally taxis, so to speak, all the way up to delivering your food and everything else? The one that I think is really important is customer expectation is our 3rd principle in this sort of anti-fragile world, where customers want something now, they want it new, they want it cheap, and they want it different, right? And, my favorite used to be Amazon and Jeff Bezos and his customer flywheel. And then I looked at how Spotify have evolved. And if you look at the AI behind Spotify, and now you've got your own DJ, I think that's pretty clever. And there's no one else in the market that's going to beat them to do that. So it continues, and you've got things like the competitive landscape. You've got things like supply chain complexities. I mean, Amazon's doing different things in order to get you your product faster, cheaper, and earlier in the marketplace than anyone else, right? They want to own the shopping world. So that's where things are heading to. So that's really the current competitive advantage, or competitive disruption, sorry. If you look to the future, the things that move companies forwards are things like being able to do scenario planning. How well can you look at your future, have different options, and go for the one that you think is going to be the winner? People, the talent management bit becomes really important. If we think there's a scarcity of talent here in Australia, overseas it's an absolute nightmare. And that's where things like AI, bots, robots will all come into play big time over the future. Innovation, resilience, and then how do you actually balance globalization against localization? We're building products. We've actually got a product on play at the moment where we've got to build a leadership program for a global audience, but it's being built out of Melbourne. So how on earth are we going to deliver that and address different learning needs, different cultures, different requirements, and then also different time zones? So there's a lot of different principles at play, and you need to have a playbook in order to do this properly.
Much, Jay. From what I'm hearing, resilience or maybe flexibility is one of the core elements of adaptability. With that, Zamil, I would like to learn more about in future work trends in terms of employment flexibility. And what changes do you think we need to make, if any, to accommodate for employment flexibility? You made a reference to some of the employment flexibility that is actually we can observe now. What changes we need to make to prepare for that flexibility?
Sure, thanks, Leila. I think that some of the changes in relation to workforce and flexibility is the focus on being outcomes based versus I'm here 9 to 5. And different people work at different paces in the right environment. And what we've certainly learned is that if you provide the right environment, people then will be able to focus on outcomes, particularly when you look at workforces now where they work part-time, they have parental carers responsibility. How do you give them the flexibility that if their optimal place and way of working and time of working really is after the kids are in bed and your best quality 3 or 4 hours are at night, then make that happen. Create the environment that lets the person be at their best, produce the best outcome for the organisation. It has to be a balance. The scales have changed. Gone are the days where you must turn up and work 9 to 5 in an office environment and that's the construct in which you work. So it's a change in mindset. It's a change in approach to employer. So the employer actually is part of the co-design process of the optimum ways of working that are outcome focused.
Emil, we know that, actually artificial intelligence, or within the context of human resource management, people analytics is helping us to tailor our management practices into individualized needs of our employees. With that, I'd like to ask Brooke, we are, with the use of AI, there is a level of hyper-personalization in terms of human resource management. What challenges or maybe opportunities hyper-personalization is introducing to the space of human resource management?
Thanks, Leila. I see that there is an abundance of opportunities when we consider particularly the work that we do in the HR services industry with regards to hyper-personalisation. We actually do some work with the University of Sydney, and I asked those students to consider the role that AI could play to make the recruitment process more human. So it might sound like a bit of an oxymoron, but I do see that is the direction, the next evolution of the role that technology plays in the work that we do in providing a service. So in years gone by, the role that we saw technology playing was, and I think it still does do this, but we've perhaps built upon this, is we saw technology and AI as playing a role to help us achieve more. So taking away some of those more routine and mundane tasks, so we could really maximise the human connection in the service that we provide. That still is the case, but it's only kind of taken us so far. We really see the use of AI, and particularly generative AI, as being really able to tap into what consumers want. So I think if you reflect on your own experience engaging with a supplier or engaging with a company to buy a product, the best services are the ones that are tailored to what's important to you and the things that are a priority to you. And you want it fast, and you want it efficiently, and all of those things. So I see that there is an opportunity for us to use AI to find things out about talents that are unique to them, and tailor the services that we provide based on the things that we understand about them, whether it's got to do with their work background, their preferences of work, and how we engage with them. I see that is, there is that's the real opportunity for us. And I think when I consider the challenges, what I would say is that the stakes are high. So the expectations of us as a service provider, particularly in this new way of working, in the new way of the new world of work, expectations are high, and if we can't meet expectations, and if we can't meet the needs of talent of today and also of tomorrow, we lose our value, and we quickly become irrelevant. Thank you.
Brooke, thank you very much. With that, now I'd like to ask Jack about, going back to the cybersecurity and the threats. We talked about the opportunity of opportunities that is presented to us because of artificial intelligence. But we know that with this transformation, especially digitization, comes along some threats, cybersecurity threats. What implications that is going to have for people management? You made a reference to some skill development. Can you explain a little bit more? What do you mean by that? What sort of skills do we need to develop within our organization? How we need to plan for that, to be prepared and maybe address those or mitigate the risk of cybersecurity?
That's a really good question. I mean, obviously I can go really detailed and really niche in terms of the requirements that you need of a workforce which enables your organization to be secure. But I'm sure not everybody in this room is doing cybersecurity, so to not risk being too irrelevant, you guys tuning out to what I have to say, I would probably say, to make it more general about the future of management, I think one of the main things we're seeing is, like what you touched on about the workforce going very remote and people working hybrid and flexible. That poses a new, as efficient as that may be, it does pose security threats, because now obviously you have people connecting from God knows what device, which can be vulnerable to pretty much anything, to be honest. Like, you could literally plug your phone into a charger at the uni and someone could have, attacked that, and then that device you've used to connect to your organization is now exposed to everything. So, not to make everyone too paranoid of anything, I think ultimately, we need to be aware of, yes, we're moving the future of remote work, we're moving into the future of using artificial intelligence, but at what point do we lose that human touch that we need to make sure that we're not just using technology to the extent where we actually risk losing everything to technology? And if you talk about security and things going to the cloud and things being remote, yeah, that has unique threats. So in terms of how, that relates to managing for the future, I suppose ultimately, yes, you need to have a workforce which is aware of security. I'm sure most of you guys are now. But in general, if we're seeing that as the trend in the future, I think ultimately we need to make sure we have the right controls in place to ensure that we're not going too far, too fast, and then we're risking, being vulnerable to God knows what. So that's what I would recommend. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. We learned a lot about the challenges and maybe some of the opportunities of preparation for the future. Now, I've got a question for all the panelists now, and that is, which of these challenges do you think should be the priority for organizations? So let's put it this way. If you had a magic wand, which of these challenges would you try to fix first?
So what are the options?
Oh,
everything we've said.
The challenges we
everything
discussed,
in general.
all the panelists. Is that maybe the employment flexibility? Is that the adaptability? Is that addressing the threats? Or
no, I think it actually has to be. You cannot pick one over the other. If you pick one in favour of the other, something will go wrong with the other. So I don't know any industry, for God's sakes, I'm in a dental service. If we prioritise cybersecurity over really good chairside care, then the chairside care would drop off. If we prioritised hybrid work, nobody would actually come to work to see our clients. So you cannot, in my view, prioritise one over the other. What you need to do is to think about, as part of your standard business planning, that you would always focus on the ecosystem of workforce, the ecosystem of IT, the ecosystem, all of them. And that's what good business planning is about, is that you should be able to simultaneously address all and continuously, because you must and you have to.
Do we all agree on that, Jay? Do you have a different view? Or?
I've got a big view, but do you want to go first?
I've got a specific thing. It won't be long. I I agree. I think you need obviously a bit of everything, but that's a bit of a cop out. So, you know, ultimately, yeah, as in like, I think, yes, we can do a bit of everything, but ultimately when it comes to managing for the future, I agree. Like we need to have the fundamentals right. So I agree. You need to have, you know, if people actually value where they work, all of these challenges are addressed in one way. So I think, yeah.
Eye off really good IT security, something goes wrong. Businesses that take their eye off, you know, client experience, employee experience, that then goes wrong. Businesses that take their eye off, you know, really solid return on investment with the right investment of their funds, then something goes wrong with financial sustainability. Yep.
So to bring it all together,
Okay.
my foundations, remember, strategy, people, culture, and tech. One thing that you guys might want to look at, this is probably your homework for the weekend, Google human synergistics lifestyle inventory, right? There's something called blue organizations. They're the ones who get things perfectly right and they become successful. So there's not just one thing we need to get right. Blue organizations normally have 5 things all happening at once. And this is how they move forwards.
Jay, do you agree with the panelist, Brooke?
Yeah, I do. I do think in reality in business, though, we have to make choices, particularly when it comes to focus and investment. So I still do think we need to prioritize, but I think we need to have a cohesive approach. So if I was, you know, I do think all are crucial and all are important, but I do think in terms of having the right capability to deliver. To deliver in the future, particularly with regards to technology, talent scarcity, specialised skills. I think we need an ability for people to be able to reflect on past experiences and apply these in a new dynamic environment. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you. So in a sense, we need to address all of them. So scholars of the future, and today you have a lot to do. So just be prepared. Okay, so the very final question, a very important one for our students, is what is the skill of the future that can help our graduates get ahead in their career? Just a short answer.
I'd probably say sales. I think if you understand sales, you can really achieve a lot in your career, whether you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to work for somebody else. Because you're effectively selling yourself every day in terms of the skills you have. I mean, like, for example, the panel members here, you guys have done an excellent job. It doesn't mean sales as in old school, trying to convince people of things. I'm just saying presenting information in a way which makes your product or service deem as favorable. So I think sales is such a fundamental. I mean, there's so many communication, etc. But I don't know. I think if everybody learned sales, they could move ahead a lot faster, in my opinion.
Thank you. What do you think, Jay?
By the time you guys get out into the world in terms of whatever you do, regulations, legislation is going to be different to what it is today. Some parts of the world are now building cities where robots have more rights than humans. Work that one out. So I think the key skills that you need to think about, and it's very much to what Jack said, I think it's around neuroplasticity and interpersonal resilience. You've got to know yourself and you've got to know the other person. That's it.
Wonderful answer. Thank you.
I would have said actually it's about agility and always having a mindset that is able to be really comfortable with the unknown, and one that is also able to adapt at pace. As you've just shared, you know, there are environments where robots are now more important, work faster, quicker than humans. So I think it's the ability to almost do sprint work in your mind and in your application as a leader, and to always, think about different ways of working. We evolve as humans, we age in our lives, but what you actually have to do as a leader is continue to evolve and change in the way that you either lead people or you manage your business.
Thank you, Zamil. And Brooke?
Yeah, so when we look for potential talent of the future, we look for a thing called learning agility. And I think this is crucial for those entering the workforce. And it's really what I mentioned earlier. So it's this ability to be able to take past experience and past learnings and be able to apply those learnings in new contexts. So as we know, the world of work and the world more broadly is ever changing, and there is no same scenario that you have faced in the past that you will face in the future. So that ability to be able to adapt, I think that's been the word of the day. But yeah, learning agility is absolutely something that I think is crucial for talent of the future.
Thank you very much, Brooke. I'm sure that our audience in the room, they have a lot of questions for our panelists. So it is time to open up the panel to the audience. So who is, for the people in the room, who is going to be the first to ask the very first question? Over there, please. Please introduce yourself first and then ask the question.
Hi, my name's Beatrix. I'm a human resources major doing a minor in business information systems. I think this question's more for Jack. Since you're working in an IT area, there's a lot of flexibility with people working remotely and in hybrid settings. And of course, as you've discussed, there's been a lot more threats because of that. And coming from an HR perspective, how do you teach people to not be so slack with their security, both at home and at the office? And how do you sort of overcome like an older generation's fear of interacting with that IT?
That's a really good question. I mean, the quick answer is training and awareness programs. That's a practical answer. Like, obviously, the more budget you allocate towards training up your staff, supposedly, the better they will be. But I think ultimately, when you ask about in the office and at home, like how do you balance that? I think obviously you may need a bit of both to actually ensure that you still have that, I guess, relationship with your workplace, because some people never ever see the people they work with, and they don't feel like they connect to the organization. Like, you guys never come to uni ever once. You don't see the building, your classmates, and you're here, you feel like you're a part of something. And if the employees don't actually feel like they're connected to their workplace, then they may not actually be inclined to want to protect it and want to protect the information, because so what if they work for Commonwealth Bank and it gets in the news because they don't care, right? So I think if people care, then they will do the right thing. But then obviously another way to make people care is give them that flexibility to be able to work in the way that suits them best, and then they will be more inclined to do the right thing. So I think the practical answer is just throw more money at it and more people, and that way people are trained better. But then also on the qualitative side of things, yeah, people need to care about where they work, I'd say. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. And other questions? And then we will move to you guys.
Hi, my name is Rukaya, and this question, I want you each to answer it because I want to get different perspectives from everyone. Have you ever been in a situation where there's a conflict at the workplace, and how did you deal with that conflict, and what did you learn from it?
And if any of you see on LinkedIn, I was actually the Chief People Officer for the Country Fire Authority. So if you want to look at an organisation that is in conflict, look at the CFA. And I was there right at the time where the union was at war with the organisation, and also, the UFU, the United Firefighters Union, they thrive on conflict. That's their bread and butter. So what I had to do was actually lead a team of HR people to work with the other C, which is calm. Because if you put fuel on conflict, it's not actually helpful. So we actually developed a really clear way in which let's look at the problem or the issue, not the conflict, because that would create conflict. And we're going, let's actually put a separate a separate lens to that. And I really worked with the HR team to say, we are going to look at the problem and then resolve the matter versus being a whirlwind of conflict. Conflict often happens with two parties having disagreement about something, but there are ways professionally that you can simply talk about the problem, not actually move into the conflict environment. And I did that for 2 years straight. So it was pretty exhausting, but I learned a lot about how to not play in the conflict field, actually. Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good answer. I haven't really got much experience with that, to be honest. So this is not my area of expertise. But there have been times, obviously, you're in the office and someone does something and you think, no, I disagree. And then you're like, no, you're wrong. And then you're wrong. And then you start arguing. So that's happened a little bit. But I think in general, I like to just nip it in the bud and actually discuss the issue and find a middle ground. I know this is a very generic answer, but I suppose whether you're in the workplace or you're at home with your partner or whatever the situation is, it's the same thing. Like, you're on the same team. How do you actually work through this? So yeah, I just address it straight away and figure out how we both happy. We want the same thing, because if you're colleagues, you probably are working towards the same outcome. Maybe you're in the same team for some sort of uplift or capability, whatever you're doing. So yeah, I would say just, I don't know, establish the common ground and realize you're actually trying to do the right thing. That's probably a bit generic, but that's what I've done.
Something similar with me as well. I was involved in the merger of two big companies. I remember Friday afternoon, 2:30, 300 people are going after each other because they're disagreeing. And we had the press, we had the aides downstairs wanting to interview employees about the tense situation and the conflict that was happening. And at the end of the day, it was basically what Zamil said. It's your view, my view. What do we have in common? What are the outcomes that we want? And how do we get to the outcomes based on a common view, not two separate views? And then the thing I learned about myself was to actually manage myself and my emotions and not let the situation drive my behavior.
Very much. Brooke, do you want to take this question as well?
Yeah, just I would just a small comment. I think it's also recognise that not all conflict is bad. So if we consider conflict being differences of opinions or perspective, I think finding the opportunity for that to become some healthy level of agitation, whether that's to ideate or whether that's to decide a better way forward. Yeah, so I encourage you to think of it in that perspective. Obviously, it has to be professional and it has to be respectful and all of those things. But when it's not, it's about demonstrating the right behaviours. So being calm, and I think also I think drawing on your own values when faced with people that might be in conflict with yours. So yeah, that's what I would say.
With what we discuss here in terms of building interpersonal skills, understanding yourself and others. I think that would be very helpful for conflict management. I'm just conscious of time because I know